Hi guys, Nikhil here. Welcome to Salesforce Troop. Today we're gonna learn client-side pagination in LWC. So client-side pagination means you are fetching whole data at once from Apex and writing your whole logic for pagination in your JavaScript, or I would say in your LWC. So let's go to our VS Code and start creating the pagination. So first thing we're gonna create our pagination demo component. So go to command palette. If you don't know how to go, you can click view command palette, select create lightning web component, then give your component name. I'll say pagination demo and I hit enter, and it will create a component under the LWC folder. And we're gonna work for accounts record and the contact records. So for that, we're gonna create a Apex class by which we can at least fetch the data. So I'll go to the command palette again and click on create Apex class, and I'll give my Apex class name data controller, and I take the default path. So my controller is ready. Let's write our code for fetching the contact list. So first thing, if you want your method to be available inside the LWC, it should be aura enabled, and because we are doing only the get method, so we can add cacheable true. I'll add cacheable true here, and now we want to create our method, so I'll give my method name get contact list, and I want static it will return the list of contact. This is my method, and in this I'll write the very basic query, that is select id and name from contact. So this is the very basic query I'm writing. Put semicolon at the end, and we have created a data controller, and the get contact list is my method name, and we're gonna call this method from our LWC component. So first deploy this class. I'll say deploy this source to org, and in meantime we'll go to the pagination demo component JS file. So here first thing we need to import the method. So first let's import that method that we have created. Our method name is get contact list. So I'll give the alias get contact list from, you can give the path @ Salesforce Apex. Within the Apex, our controller name is data controller and the method name is get contact list. So the basic approach is this: you just import the method. Now your method is available inside the LWC. Now we want to call this method, and to call that we're gonna use the wire service. So first you need to import the wire from the LWC, and then we'll call our wire method, and in that you need to pass your method name, and it's up to you whether you want to use it as a property or as a function. I mostly use as a function because I would say like error handling is easy or debugging is easy, so I always go with this approach. It's up to you totally. There is no performance issue as such, but mostly people recommend, if you want to play around with the data that is coming from the server, you use this approach. So I'll check if data is there, then this dot, I'll create a variable on the top that gonna store my data that is coming from the server. I'll say that variable name total contacts, and whatever the data is coming, I'm storing in this variable. Apart from that, we can console this data to see that. With property, it's not possible without using the render callback and other approach to see the data immediately. That's why I follow this. and I'll print this dot contact total contacts. So now what I have done, I have imported my class and the method. I'm calling the method using the wire service, and I have using the wire as a function. So this is my function name. It will receive error and the data. I'm checking if data is available, take the data and store it in the total contacts property, and I'm printing it. And we can do it for error as well, and I'm not going to do the error handling for this particular demo. So I'll say console the error, whatever the error is coming, we'll console that. So our wire service is ready. Let's deploy this. But before deploying, our meta file should expose our component. So I'll say is exposed to true, and what all targets you want to use. So it's up to you where all you want to place this component. For time being, I'm using the single target. I'll use the target lightning __ app page. So I'm going to place this component only in the app page, and my JS is ready. I haven't written anything in my HTML. So let's deploy this and check whether the connection between the Apex and the LWC is working or not. And deployment failed. It's saying lightning app is not a valid target, so L should be small. Lightning L is small, just make sure, and deploy this again. So the component has deployed. Let's go to our org. So I already have a page here. It's an app page. So let's edit the page and place our component into this page. On the screen you will not see anything when we place this component, but when we look into the console we should see some data. So it's loading the component. On the left hand side you can search your component name. I searched and here is my component name. I'll place it into the first column and I'll save it. And let's go back. And once you're back to the page, we need to go into the console. For that you do the right click, select inspect, go to the console, and here in the console you will see an array of 16. So it's returning us 16 contact lists because we are querying only the ID and the name. That's why it's returning ID and the name. It's an array of objects. So our connection is working fine. Let's go and create the UI. So for UI, we're gonna use a lightning card. That is a basic step. Lightning card, and this should has title, Pagination, demo, contact. So this is the basic card. And now within the card, what else we can do is we can give first margin so that our card looks better on the screen. Our content should not touch to the border of the card. So for that I'm gonna use SLDS margin around class of medium size. So medium is 16 pixel. And I can give some icon name as well to my card. It's up to you whether you want to give or not. So it looks good, that's why I'm giving an icon hyphen name, and the custom 63 you can give 40, 41, whichever custom this icon you want. And now within the card, what I want is I want to render the data on the screen, and for that I'm gonna do the simple thing. I'll check first data is available or not, and I'll say check if total context is available or not. If it's available, run the for each loop. And for each loop syntax, now everybody knows, it takes the array on which you want to run the loop. So total contact on which we want to run the loop. For item is the current item in the each iteration, so I want to give this name as contact, and I'll close this, and within this I'll use the p tag and print my contact.name. Name is the property I'm getting, and it's each object is a contact now, so it starts looping it. And in for each key is very important, and it should be always unique, and we know our IDs are unique, so I'll say contact.id. And now let's deploy this and see how it looks. It's deployed now, and let's go and refresh the page. So the 16 contact names are printing on the screen, but I want a pagination to be in the card, and that pagination should be very flexible enough. And because we have less data right now in our developer org, so I'll say okay, I'll show the 5 records at a time, and on click of next I'll show the next 5 and next 5 like that. Okay, let's go to our VS Code and create a pagination component. For that, again you go to your command palette, select create lightning web component. I'll say pagination, hit enter, take the default path, and now here I'll show you how to create a reusable component sort of. You can modify based on your need or your project, but I will go with a simple component, but that will be a reusable component. Okay, so our pagination component is there. Let's go to HTML. So in this HTML, we'll design the layout first. So we'll use the lightning layout that is given by Salesforce only, and this is very helpful for designing the responsive layout as well. So I'll say in the layout I will have item, and I will have 3 items. One will be a previous button, and in the center I'll display some text, and on the right hand side I'll display the next button. So there are 3 layouts. In the first one we'll create the lightning button, and the button will take the label. So the label on the left hand side always in the pagination is previous. I want the icon as well on the button. So the icon is the back arrow, so it's already available in the Salesforce utility colon chevron left, and I can wrap this up. And we need a handler as well. On click of this button, what should happen? We'll use on click call previous handler. Along with that, I want disable, but we'll do that later. And I close the button. So my first button is ready. I'll copy paste the same button and go to the third layout, and there I'll say next, and this should be chevron right. So I'll hit left to right, and I want the icon position not to on the left side, I want the icon position to on the right side. So I can add an attribute icon position to my button, and I want my click handler name to be the next handler. So I have now 2 handlers. I'll go to my JS file first, quickly create these methods. So the one method is next handler, and the second method is previous handler. We'll keep it empty for time being. So both method is ready now, and now we'll add some text here. Right now it's just simply say displaying dash of dash page. We'll fill this out once the data will come inside, or I'll say displaying. Okay, so now our pagination is ready by the design, and let's deploy this. But we don't need to deploy with changing the meta file, because we want it to be a component, and we'll embed this component to our pagination demo as a wrapper, I would say. So pagination demo is my parent component and pagination is my child component, and I want it to add on the footer of the card. And if you know how slots work, we can use div slot footer. There is a slot in the card component footer in which you can add your component. So I'll call the component using C hyphen pagination, and now we embed the component so it will load, and I want to add some margin so that my text and the pagination component will not touch each other. So I'm giving the horizontal margin, and let's deploy our first child component and then deploy the parent component, because if you deploy first the parent component it will say I'm not able to find this component. So let's go and refresh the page. Now on the screen you can see button is coming, previous button with the left icon, next button with the right icon, and some text is coming in between, and we want the button to on the opposite direction. For that we can go back and add the property to our pagination component HTML. So in that there is a property called flexibility grow. So flexibility, behind the scene it use justify content. So we can add that property to our item, flexibility equal to grow. So it will take the equal width on the both side of this text. So let's deploy this again. It's deployed. Let's go to our page and refresh the page. So now next is on the other side, but text is still not in the center, but we'll take care of this, don't worry. Okay, we need to add some class, we'll do that. So let's start focusing on our logic. So whenever the page load, it should show me only 5 records, and if it is on the first page, the previous button should be disabled because he has no previous records to see, and only the next button should be enabled. And once it reaches to the last records or the last page, then the next button should be disabled and the previous button should be enabled. So let's go to our VS Code and start writing the code. So the first thing, we'll go to our main parent component, that is pagination demo. Now we are getting the data here. We need to pass this data down to our child component, and for that we'll go to our HTML and say, hey C pagination, I'll pass you a property records, and I'll map the data to this property, that is total contacts. So we are passing this data. So this attribute should be available inside the pagination.js so that it can cache the data. So let's go to our JS file and create the property with the same name. But right now it's a private property. To make this property available outside this component, import the API and decorate this property with @API. Okay, but I don't just want the data, I want to modify the data as well once I receive the data from the parent. And for that case I need to create a setter, so that will set the records, and this setter will receive the data. And once I'll receive the data, I'll check first whether data is there or not. If data is there, I'll do few things. So I'll create those properties as well. First thing, I want to check what is the data I want to store into a property. I'll say I'll create a property called total records, and I'm giving a generic name within my component because this is not specific to contact or specific to account. So I'm creating a reusable component, so I'll go with a generic name. So I'll say total records. So if data is available, if data is coming from parent, the total records are nothing, that's the data. So I'm storing the data as it is. Then I want the page size, right? So I'll create a property page size. I'll initialize it by the number 5. So I'll say at one time only 5 will be visible. Okay, we'll make it configurable later, but I just want the 5 records to be shown on the page, and I can make this name as size only actually, or record size, yeah. Now we'll add another property, that is visible records. So right now suppose we are getting the 16 records, right? But I want to show only the 5 records. So what I'm gonna do is I'll create a property visible records, and I'm gonna use slice on the data. Slice generates always a new copy, and whenever it's the first time it should start with 0 comma the record size. So our record size is this dot record size, that is 5. So basically what it gonna do is, I'll show you quickly. So this is your data, right? So suppose in the temp variable I store the data, and I want to run the slice on the temp variable. Right now in the temp1 variable there are 16 records, and if I run the slice, I'll zoom it a little bit. So if I run the slice, it will take from where you want to start, I'll say 0, and till when you want to go, I'll say till 5. So it slice only 5 records out of 16. If I hit enter, see it giving me first 5, right? Because it start with the 0 index and go to the 4. But if I go back to the original array, it will remain 16. So that's the beauty of slice. It will generate a new copy. It will not overwrite the existing or mutate the original data. Okay, so that's what we are doing here. On load, we are saying whatever is the original record size, just slice that. So here in our case also, we are cutting the first 5 records and storing into a variable visible records. Then we want to know the total pages, like how many pages we are going to use in the navigation. So I'll say total page equal to, so the data dot length, that is 16, and we need to divide it by the number of records we want to show on the screen, that are 5, and I'll say divide that with a 5. But most of the time it may gives you a decimal number, right? So for that we'll use math.ceil, so that will round it down, not up. So if it is 1.3, it consider it as a 1, or 5.3 it consider as 5. Okay, even 5.7 it consider as 5. Okay, it's a ceil property. And so now we created our variable total records, visible records. Sorry for confusion, the ceil is rounded up, not down. So that math.round do the other way around. Okay, so we are just rounding off this number for your understanding right now. So the total page should always be a whole number. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should not be with the decimal. So now we have the data. What should be our next step? So now the biggest challenge here is, because we are creating a reusable component and we have asked our parent to pass whole data down to us. We'll take care. But now on the screen we have to update the list as well to the 5, right? So we need to pass the data that we are slicing it here. For that I'll create a method here. I'll give it a name, update records. So for that I'll write update records, and within this what I'm going to do is I'm going to dispatch a method, dispatch event. We'll create a new custom event, and event name I'll give update, and with this event I'll pass the data. If you have attended my child to parent communications session, you know you need a detail property to pass it, and we want to pass it in the form of object, and I'll say I'll pass it as a records, and it will be this dot visible records. So whatever I have sliced here, I am just passing it on the page load or my component load only, because as the component loads it call this setter, it immediately check if data is available, it slice it out, and I'll call this update record on the page load itself. Because on load I have to tell to my component or parent component, you have to use this data visible records. So now let's go and map this update method in the parent component. I'll say whenever a custom or any method you are writing in the HTML, it start with on, then your method name, or sorry, not method name, event name. So on update, and we'll say update handler. We can give update handler, or I'll give a more generic name. I'll say update contact handler. Update contact handler. And once it receives the data, we need to go and create this method first. It will receive an event, and within this you can console that value just to make sure the data is coming or not, and you can fetch that value event.detail.records. I guess that was records only. So let's deploy our both component again and see on page load whether this component is calling or not, and if it's calling, whether the data is coming or not. And in our case right now the data should come only 5 records. So let me deploy the second component as well. So now the component is deployed. Let's refresh the page and nothing comes up. So let's quickly debug it. And if I look into my pagination.js, I did a very silly mistake that if I am using a setter, I need to use the getter as well. And the getter, I'll write return this dot visible records, and let's deploy this quickly. Now it's deployed. Let's go back our org and refresh the page. And now on the screen component is at least rendering, and on the console you can see it's sending us the 5 array of object, and each will contain some data. So this is the ID and the name. So at least we are getting from the child to parent, that these are the proxies, and this is the 16 records that are the total records. So what we can do here is we can play a clever trick. So we'll use whatever the data is coming from child to parent, and first we'll store this into a variable. We'll say visible contacts, and we'll say whatever the data is coming, this store this into a variable, this dot visible contacts. And I'll just make a copy using the spread operator, a new copy of this data that is coming. And now once the visible contact is available, I want my HTML to use visible contacts instead of total contacts. So in the pagination on load, we are passing the total contacts that are the 16 records, and on load immediately 16 records catched by the pagination.js, it automatically slices it down to the 5 records, and on the load itself it will dispatch the 5 records to the parent. Once parent receive it, it will map to the variable or the property visible contacts, and it loads the HTML. Let's see if it works or not. While saying it was looking also big thing, but it should work. I haven't touched anything, I guess, in the pagination HTML, only the demo page I touched. Let's go back, it's deployed, and see on the screen whether we are able to see the 5 records or not. Yes, I'm seeing only the first 5 records now. That's a good thing. Now our next challenge is to on click of next 5 should come, and we'll disable the button later on, and we'll center align this text first. Okay, let's go to our VS Code, and I'll go to HTML, the pagination. I'll add the class SLDX text align center to this. I'll wrap this static text inside the p tag. I'll give the class, and then it should align center in the flow or inside our UI. And now I want whenever the page loads and I click next, so the next handler will get called and only the next 5 should visible. So let's write our logic for the next 5. So on the next case, first we need to check whether the current page, so we need another property here, that is current page, and that is always start with 1, because whenever the page loads you are showing the first page of your pagination, so it always start with first. So here we're gonna check first thing, whenever I click next, check this dot current page is less than this dot total page. So we are checking whether this is not the last record or last page, right? So that if it is, it should not click or do anything on the click of next. Apart from that, we can check, we'll say, okay, we'll go with this only. The current page should be less than total page, and it should not equal to total page as well. So we'll add another condition here in the end. I'll say this dot current page should not equal to this dot total page. So any of this condition is not required, I guess, because if it is less than, it should be less than. Okay, let's go and write the next line. So we are checking, we are making sure, okay, the current page is smaller than the total pages, and then if it is yes, then we'll say the current page, this dot current page plus 1. You can use assignment operator plus 1 or anything, but I'll go with the normal notation. And then I'm updating the current page and immediately calling my method update record. And within the update record, what I'm gonna do here is I'll create something, because I want a similar logic to trigger from the previous handler as well. So I'm writing the logic sum here. I'll say the starting of the data slicing should be, you check the start index always be this dot current page -1. So your slicing should always start one index before the current page. So if it is the first time, 1 minus 1, it's 0, so it start with 0, and we are multiplying it with this dot record size, and record size is 5 in our case. So 0 multiplied by 5 is 0 only. And the second scenario we're gonna use is end case, where till when the slicing should happen. I'll say this dot record size, that is 5 multiplied by this dot current page. So if you are doing the slicing for the first time, your record size is 5 and the current page is 1. So we are doing the slicing 0 hyphen 0 comma 5 that we were doing here. So we don't need this line here, and we'll move it down, and we'll say it should start with the start and end it at end. So for the first time when we called it here, it will come immediately to the down and check, okay, what is the current page. Current page is 1, 1 minus 1 0, multiply by anything is 0, so it start the slicing with 0 that we hard coded earlier, and the end should be the record size. If it is the record size, by default we have set to 5. We want to show the 5 records at a time, and the current page is 1, so it is 5, so we are slicing 0 comma 5, so the first 5 records we are slicing it. Now suppose I click on the next, my current page is now 2. 2 minus 1, 1, and record size are 5, so it will start slicing it from the fifth index, and it will go to the uh, record size is 5 and 10. Current page is 2, so it is 10, so it start with 5 and slice it till the 10th index. So likewise it will integrate it will work. Okay, so let's go and see whether our next handler is working or not. Let's deploy this to work. Let's refresh the page. And it throws an error, data is not defined. Let's quickly go to our page where is not data defined. So this data is not available. We just copy paste from the top. Data we already mapped to the total records, so we'll use the this dot total records. Let's deploy it again. But yeah, errors sometimes are good because it help you guys also to understand how I'm looking into the things. So it's deployed. Let's go to the page and refresh the page. So the first 5 records are visible here right now. Our text is aligned center now, and let's click on the next button. This should go off and the next 5 records should come up. And now if I click next, you see immediately it's reflecting. I'll zoom it a little bit, and if I click next, it's taking the next 5. But on previous, nothing is happening because we haven't written the code. Let's go and write the previous code as well quickly. And previous logic is almost same. The first thing we need to check if this dot current page is greater than 1 or not, then only you should trigger the previous handler. And in this case the same thing will happen, the only thing will just minus the current page. If you go to the second page, come back to the first page, call the same record handler, run the same logic and update it. So let's deploy this and see if it's working or not. And let's go to our page. It's deployed now. Let's refresh the page. Now we are showing +5. I click next. If I click previous, it will coming back. If I'm clicking again, nothing is happening. If I'm clicking next, next, and nothing happening. If I go previous, yeah. So these things are working. Now we want to make it little bit more better. I want whenever it's a first page, don't show the disable the previous button, and if it is the last page, disable the next button. So let's go to our VS Code and write the logic. These logics are easy, you guys already know this. So I'll create a getter. I'll say disable previous, and I'll create another getter here, disable next. You can write btn as well for a more meaningful name. Now we have a 2 methods. So I want the previous button to be disabled when my current page is less than equal to 1. I'll say return this dot current page less than equal to 1. I'll say less than equal to 1, and here in the disable next, I'll check this dot current page is greater than equal to total page. So basically it will never be greater than, but we are just writing it should be equal to. If it's match with the total page or it is a last page, then disable the next. How you get to know the last page? Because total page are the number of pages we have, and if it reaches the count 5 and the total pages are 5, then the next button will be disabled. Similarly here, current page is by default 1. If it is equal to 1, it's disabled. Okay, let's go and use these properties in our HTML. Gonna be very simple. There is a attribute disabled, and we'll say disable previous. Similarly, I copy this, come here, and I'll change this disable next. So now our button gonna work out. I want to show the number of current page and the total pages. So I'll change this to current page because we are already storing the current page. For the first time, I'll say displaying one of my total pages. Total pages also I'm storing in a variable. And likewise, if you click next, second of 5 pages, third of 5 pages. If you come back, it will decrement the current page. So let's deploy this and see how it looks. So it's deployed. Let's go and refresh the page. So I refresh the page. Now you see previous button is disabled, displaying one of that total count is not coming. We'll look into that. I'll click next, and now it's coming. I don't know the reason. I'll look into. And then we are saying now the previous button is enabled immediately. I'll click next and next till the time it reaches to the last page. It next button become disabled. Now if I come back, previous and previous become disabled. Let me refresh it quickly just to make sure that count is coming properly or not. So for the first time it's not coming, so let's look into that. So if we look into the code, our total page is not printing. So let's see from where the total page is coming. We are getting the total page here, and we did a mistake here. We haven't created the total page property and we haven't initialized. So I'll initialize it with the 0, but once it's update the value, it get the updated value. So let's deploy and see this. And let's go and refresh the page. So now the both numbers are coming, current page and the total page, and things are working fine. Let's align the style little bit. I didn't like the buttons are touching and that space is there. I guess I gave the wrong class. So if I go to the demo HTML, instead of horizontal, let's make it as vertical, and let's deploy this. So let's refresh the page and see if any change comes or not. But you can play it with the design based on your need. So now you can see the space is coming perfectly, the buttons are aligned perfectly, and if I'm clicking next, everything is working fine. So till here it's all good. Our component is working fine, our pagination is working fine. Let's go and create another card and see whether this pagination is reusable or not. Okay, so first we'll go to the Apex class and we'll create our second method. I'll copy paste this as it is, and this time instead of contact I'll go with the account. So I'll say my method name should be get account list. Definitely it will return with the type account from the account. Let's keep the name and ID same. We'll fetch these two properties only. I'll copy this name and I'll come back to my LWC. Let's import second method as well. Import get contact list from the same path. I'm in the same class. And correct. So let's create the second wire adapter. So you can use second wire service or as a property as well, but for the convenience I'm going with the as a function only. I'll take this name, I'll keep it as it is. I'll create two similar properties. So I'll just name them as earlier it was total contacts. I'll say total accounts, and the second property I'll say visible accounts. Okay, and once I'll receive the account data, I'll say the total account should be the data and print the total accounts. And I'll go to the HTML. I'll copy paste the whole card again, and I'll just paste it below. You can create another component as well. I just don't want to create another component. I'll say the heading of this card as pagination demo accounts, and if visible context, so here it's visible accounts, and I'll say the each record in the loop should be account instead of contact, and we are passing it down like we are rendering account.name account.id. And in the pagination, we are embedding the same component again. We should pass the total accounts. So that is this. We are passing the total accounts. And on update, this time we should have a different handler. I'll say on update account handler. I'll create a method below this that will also receive an event, and I'll copy paste this as it is, and instead of visible accounts it should be visible, instead of visible contacts it should be visible accounts. So now we have just reused the same thing, and I have seen actually many examples people write this whole code outside and they write the same code again and again. And ideally you never use two pagination in single component, very rarely, but we build it very flexible now. And now right now the control that my parent has is the only record is taking, but we are not allowing him to touch anything else. So let's give him the feature by which he can change the record size. Suppose he want record size 6, right? So let's make this property global. So I append @API in front of this. So I'm saying my parent can pass me down this property. So I'll go and in my HTML of the second card, I'll say record size equal to 6. This time my second pagination want by default the record number if record visible on the screen should be 6. I'll say records -6 because attribute can't be a uppercase, so it should be a camel case, not camel case, kebab case. So now the problem is here we are passing it as a string and here we are using as a number, and by default if it will not pass it will take as 5, that's fine. But if it comes in any of the calculation it may break something, so let's keep our component like error free or error proof in advance. So I'll say whenever the property comes from the top, just check that property using this dot, because the property that comes from the parent will come in the form of record size. We'll use the number method to convert that string to the number and we'll update the property record size. So it automatically use now number going forward. So let's deploy this and deploy our demo component as well and see whether our accounts pagination is working or not. So the deployment is done. Let's go back to our page. I'll close down this console. So it has not loaded any of the component. It means some error is there. Let's go to the console and see if any error is coming or not. So we are able to see only first 5 records that are the accounts records actually. So let's go and start debugging it. So in VS Code, let me quickly check the things, and again the silly mistake, the both method names are same, so it should not be. So I'll change it to accounts. So first wire method that in which we are calling the get contact list, I am using the function name wired contact. Here it should be wired account. It can be anything, but it should not be same actually. So let's deploy this and see. So I have refreshed the page now, and finally we are getting both the cards. So first with the contact, second with the accounts. Both previous buttons are disabled, that's good. And accounts contacts are more, so it's taking 4 pages, and here it's 3 pages because we are showing 6 records at a time, 1 2 3 and 6. Here we are showing 5 records. And let's say click next, next, and here also it's working totally fine. So if I go back quickly, just make sure we are mapping the things correctly. We are calling the correct method. Yes, but why my contacts and account names are same? Let me quickly debug it again. I'm mapping it to different variable. And while passing, I hope I am using the correct variable. Here it's total contact. It should be total accounts, not contacts in the HTML. Oh my god, today I did a lot of mistakes. So I update the, I'm passing the correct data now at least. So let's go and refresh the page again. But at the end, the functionality is working fine. I'm happy with that. So it's more about displaying the data. And in my account, currently I only have 5 accounts. So it's both buttons are disabled. That's also we tested now finally. And here it's working totally fine. Previous, next, and previous. So that's it for today's session. And today we learn a lot of things like how we can build a reusable one, and you can reuse the same code in your projects based on your look and feel. You can change the design, but the logic will be remain same for next and the previous. And I build whole logic inside my pagination component, not in the parent component, because maximum people write their whole logic outside and then they repeat it again and again if they are creating multiple components. So always try to reuse the same code. And thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel if you're not, and have a lovely day. Thank you.